source who's saying she's sweating, she's panicking.
Yeah.
But I think people ate that up because people already assumed that that was happening. It was at that point, it was just confirmation bias that the president of Mexico, who people say is part of the narco party, um, is freaking out that these criminal organizations are going to be declared by the United States as terrorist organizations. Yeah, I would probably be shitting my pants too.
Yeah, it's you know, we get a lot of guests on here that talk about Mexico and how corrupt it is. Would you Could you confirm how corrupt it potentially is all the way up to the top? And then another question is there any kind of sources that might say that even leads into DC?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, through my own reporting, and simply just through looking into context and details, whether it's about, the investigation into the previous Mexican president receiving money from the Sinaloa cartel, the
Hmm.
open investigation into the governor of Sinaloa, um, and then El Mayo ending up on the American side of the border. It doesn't take a fucking genius to put these puzzle pieces together and say, yeah, this is corruption that runs through the deepest and most private corridors of every level of government in Mexico. And this is something that we've seen for years, and people know about this. I'm not coming on here and breaking some crazy fucking story saying, oh my God, the Mexican government is probably corrupt. I mean, let's be fucking for real. But the difference now is that Trump is publicly screaming from the rooftops of the White House that we're going to crack down on this corruption. Why? Because this level of corruption has allowed for too many Americans to die.
Yeah.
So for uh, for years, there's been heroin, meth, crack, but now fentanyl kind of changed the tune a little bit because fentanyl was so deadly, it's so toxic, and it's coming into the United States through, by the way, both borders, northern and southern border. And I talk about that a lot. We can go back to that. Um, and I think that at this point, it's okay, there's too many people dying, there's too much fentanyl. We need to sort of crack down on this in a way. And I mean, it's important to keep in mind that people in Mexico aren't doing fentanyl, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's of course the Mexican president is going to say, I, hypothetically, allegedly, you know, if you're the Mexican president and you're profiting off of organized crime, and the citizens of your country are not dying at extreme rates due to organized crime, due to the drugs, let's say, because the organized crime is killing a lot of people because of public displays of violence. But if you're profiting off of it and you don't have hundreds of thousands of people dying, why would you put an end to it?
Yeah. It's not your emergency.
No, it's not. It's an American emergency.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. There's thoughts that why would President Sheinbaum be so nervous about the whole indication for the cartel? Well, because eventually, if the U.S. military gets involved, starts to dismantle them, and eventually, when you start gathering intel, you start to find out the corruption might go all the way up, and that's a fear of some people. Like, hey, if they start catching you guys, are you guys going to give me up? And that kind of idea, I imagine, through all politics in Mexico, I imagine is the fear as who knows what the next steps is for the United States government and the cartel, right? Designate them as a terrorist organization. What are the next steps? I have some thoughts because that is my background, special operations. So I have some ideas on what could be coming next. But in that, as we were dismantling terrorist organizations in Afghanistan or Iraq, it was a slow process of gathering intel, of doing missions. We were doing raids on different houses, gathering those individuals up, whether it be kill or capture, and then we secure all information we had to gather on further intel to do further missions. And in those intel gathering systems, you start to identify other people associated with these individuals, and then you continue to break it down slowly. That's the process of what I did in Iraq and Afghanistan. I imagine we're not far from that with now added technology that would make it even easier process. And so when you do that, the web of lies that's been happening, the web of corruption starts to kind of show its face. And that's what I believe a lot of politicians will be fearing. Even if there is corruption spilled over in America, I think we will find it during these times. But that's what I think is happening in the higher ends of the government in Mexico.
I agree. And I think that's what's prompting this strong sense of fear is, it's not about them going in and capturing the guys who are responsible for making fentanyl or even trafficking it. It's about assets frozen for associates, cartel sleeper cells in the United States, people who are in the United States, sort of in a, you know, exile in a way. They can't be in Mexico. They're in the United States. They're living sort of cushy lives. And now that life is going to unravel because why do you have X amount of money that somehow ties back to someone who is associated with the cartel? Automatically, now you become an associate and those assets are frozen. And I think that is going to be the biggest deterrent. And it's also going to be what's spooking most people is not the American government, going in and blowing up these trap houses in Culiacan or Reynosa. It's going to be people who are in positions of power, who have a lot of money, who have a lot of nefarious money, dirty money, and they're going to have to say goodbye to that money, or they're going to have to try to hide it. And they're now going to be on a list, and they're going to be watched. And I think that's going to scare a lot of people in business, people in politics,
Yeah.
who have ties with Mexico and who have ties with organized crime.